This is a show about jewelry, why we wear it, why it matters, how it's made, and what it means. I'm Alex D, and I turn cannabis into gold. I make mind-blowing jewelry in gold, silver, and platinum from cannabis plants here in Canada for stage, screen, for people who want to rock crazy jewelry. I'm the Cannabis Goldsmith. So I've been working on a room here on the property to build a podcasting studio and a place where I can edit photography. So kind of like a computer room, podcasting room. And I had to take it out of the workshop because it's so dusty in there with all the work I'm doing with the sanding and the filing and all that stuff. And it gets in the gear, so you don't want that. So I decided to separate the two rooms out. This show is not coming to you from the new room, but it will be. I think by next week. I've painted the room yesterday. It had to be painted a special gray color for the editing of the photography and stuff that I'm going to be doing, and the video, editing of video content and stuff in this space. So the walls had to be a certain color of gray, a kind of a neutral gray, like if you're a photographer, gray card gray is what the walls are right now that I painted yesterday. And I haven't painted in a while. It's so I was worried it would be a bit too dark because it's gray, right? And this property is very bright. There's tons of light coming into it from all angles, but there's also shade here. But I was worried to create a little room that's absolutely dark and kind of like a cave. That might not be such a pleasant place to be working. But now that I've painted the room, I haven't taken off the masking tape yet, but now that I've painted this space, it's kind of an attic sort of room with a very sloped ceiling. It's a very unusual shaped room, which will make it exceptionally good for audio recording, I think, because the angles are all weird and the sound reflections are going to be quite different than this right here. Also, it doesn't have a window right on the street, so we won't be getting any traffic noise or less traffic noise. The sound will find its way in somewhere. So that's what I've been doing. I've been preparing this room and waiting for leaves to grow for these rings that I'm designing for this couple in Alberta. But I don't have leaves. The leaves are just not cooperating this year for small designs. You know, I've got these huge leaves on plants that are giant for giant pieces, but you know, to cast jewelry from smaller leaves, it's just been impossible because the smaller leaves they're just not right. They're not the right shape. They're not the right length. They're not the right thickness. They're just not working for some reason. And you can't force the plant here. It's just there's no way to. I just have to wait until I see a couple of good leaves, and then I'm gonna clip them off, and then we'll start working with them and making them into this matching set of bands for this couple in Alberta. But I'm perpetually watching my plants here. I've got 3 outdoor plants and 1 indoor plant now. But I'm watching them, and one of them is kind of, it has a genetic mutation, and the leaves are not good at all. The leaves are deformed, and on the whole plant, they're just weird and unusable for jewelry. But every so often there'll be one that isn't, and so I guess that's the odd one on the whole plant. And with weed, it's been, with cannabis plants, it's been so inbred and genetically, people are trying to breed it with each other, and amateurs are doing it, and it's like AI almost, right? Where the AI it's really fun at first, but suddenly it starts flooding everything with the same sort of quality stuff that just has no, it's all the same, right? And I think the weed, the cannabis, is because it's being inbred with each other and all this, and it's developing weaknesses in its ability to cope with the environment, or cope with heat, or to cope with bugs or fungi or whatever. You can see I planted one plant that I grew from seedling, and it died in like 2 weeks. Once I put it in the ground, it was really healthy, and then there's some kind of weird fungus that happened, and it wouldn't, the roots, it couldn't draw energy from the roots, and it just died. And it was like 5 feet tall. It was sad. But I mean, these plants are not, they are what we are. They are what they are, right? And I'm glad we have them. And I'm glad we can grow them here in Canada legally, so I can do my designs. But this year hasn't been good for the small leaves, is what I'm trying to say. The big leaves are the pieces made from big leaves. Oh, I'm capturing lots of big leaves for giant pieces. And there's, yeah. In the winter, when the plants are harvested and I can look at the designs, I'll see. But I think it'll be predominantly bigger leaf designs this year. But anyway, today I want to talk about political cartoons. Between now and November, it's just going to be politics round the clock. It'll be round the clock politics. It'll be so difficult to hide from it. Already, it's grinding people down. It's grinding me down. I don't want to do art because the whole mood is just unsettled. Is the world going to end or not? Or is somebody going to get elected or not? Is somebody going to get assassinated or not? It's just like, it's just horrifying, right? Now, how can you make art in that situation where it's absolutely horrifying and it's not inspirational at all? How can you make art when that goes on? Like, wow. I'm still trying to figure that out. That's probably why I painted the room and doing all this sort of keeping my hands on the tools, the art tools, but not really tucking in, because to be honest, I really don't feel like doing work when the politics are this bad. But as a professional, as Seth Godin says, you're a professional if that doesn't matter. So you make art, or you do design, or you do whatever it is you do. That mustn't stop you. You must go forward, right? And so I am. And while I can't, I'm not inspired to make new jewelry designs right now. I know that I will be. So I'm getting my tools ready in order to make that possible, right? I'm creating the stuff that I have to do around that to make those designs happen. And with that, for me, it's this new room where digital capture and stuff is going to take place in this new gray colored room. And the podcast will come from there too. So the sound will be a little bit different next week. Hopefully it'll be quieter, but a little bit different. But today I want to talk about the politics of art, the art of politics, and political cartoons. Political cartoons are the art of politics. Now, you might think political cartoons are not art, but they are. They are art. So that's what qualifies them to be on this podcast today. You've probably seen them. You might have favorites, even if you don't particularly follow any particular cartoonist. You've seen them. You've seen them before. You see them online now. They used to be in newspapers. They're so important, and they allow us to process the situations that are ongoing in the politics of humanity. Like, if you think our politics is crazy now, historians will say it was really fucking crazy in the late 30s or in the in the 20s or at the end of the 1800s. There's always times when society is just like fraught with like anxiety over political situations in their countries. And in some countries around the world, this never goes away. It happens all the time. Like with us here in Canada, North America, we have respites, we have breaks between insanity, it seems, and then suddenly it comes at us from the politicians big time. So to make sense of it all, we have political cartoonists. Now, political cartoons are, some of them, political cartoonists, some of them refer to themselves as artists, and then others refer to themselves as journalists. Now, I'm not going to go into the differences there, but I'm going to consider them all artists because they are producing art, and but the difference here is it's being published a lot of times by big media. Now, these cartoons are interesting because they clarify political situations in a way that people can understand them. They bring these complex, kind of emotional, dramatic situations that politicians are creating for us in order to get elected, and they're simplifying and clarifying all that into a cartoon that is easy to understand for most people. So that's the first thing they do. The second thing they do is they provide kind of a critique and a commentary on what's going on. So here is where the opinion comes in. This is the opinion of the cartoonist, of the person who is drawing the art here. This is their opinion, and it's their critique and commentary on what they're trying to show in the art, in the cartoon. So if they're being critical of the government, they're going to show that in the cartoon. Or if they're making fun of the government, they're going to show that in the cartoon. If they're going to, they can do all kinds of stuff. They can praise the government, but often I don't see praise, right? I see it sometimes, but from political cartoonists, but I don't often see it. But what I do see is criticism and commentary on the current political situation, wherever the cartoonist is, whatever they're trying to talk about. Now, they might not even talk about stuff in their own country. They might talk about stuff in other people's countries too. They have the latitude to do that. The third thing is they create engagement with the art. And if somebody looks at a political cartoon and laughs at it, they engage with it on a different level than if they were just reading a column or an opinion column in a newspaper, or reading a blog post or a Substack or whatever. The cartoon can be really powerful. It's like it contains some writing, but it also contains images. It can be a really powerful tool. That laugh, that when you see one and you understand it and you laugh when you see it, or you smile, or it makes your stomach turn, because they can do that too. I'll talk about one political cartoonist that's really good at doing that. But it creates this connection between the viewer of the cartoon, the person who's reading the cartoon, and the political situation around them, around what the cartoonist is trying to evoke, right? The fourth thing is it becomes historical record. So I'm sure you've seen cartoons of the World War II, the Nazi cartoons from back in the day, or cartoons of Winston Churchill, or cartoons of early, American political cartoons. These are become historical record. I think largely to their insertion in newspapers and magazines. I'm thinking about that now. What happens now? Now they're all mostly going online. And if the newspapers go away completely, and they only exist online, will they still have that historical record that they once did? That's something to think about for you political cartoonists out there. It's like, as fewer and fewer people are reading newspapers and magazines on dead trees, their work is being moved online. And then this is a historical record that can be modified by the platforms where it exists, right? So the platform owner could go out of business and all that will be lost. Or in the case of what happened recently with MTV, which is an absolutely shocking thing. I was just absolutely shocked at this. You might have heard about all the Paramount was trying to sell to some company called Skydance, and the woman who owns Paramount didn't want it to happen or whatever. Anyway, some of these companies, or that company, Paramount, owned MTV and the website MTV and all the history, the video history and the photographic history, the entire history of MTV from their website was under the control of Paramount, and they just deleted it all. They deleted it all. And in its place is promotions for Teen Mom on Disney or Paramount or wherever the fuck it's hosted. But they decided just to eliminate it. They just erased it. They erased 30 years of MTV history with a click, and in its place is Teen Mom promotions for the network. Now, this is what happens when stuff goes online, right? It can happen. Now, the whole platform doesn't have to go down. The whole platform, it doesn't have to be an apocalypse where Facebook suddenly is hacked and nothing can be found anymore, or it doesn't have to be that, but it can be. It could be. I mean, it could be the way AI is going. We could lose entire online platforms, right? And all their content, all the content you've been posting since 2007 or whatever could disappear. So when we talk about historical record, I mean, I'm not really confident that online is historical record, because it can be changed, it can disappear, it can just disappear, like in the blink of an eye, just like MTV, gone. Future historians, if they want to find out anything about that, they are going to have to look at blurry YouTube videos in low resolution, if they can find them. But anything else is gone. So how's that? Historical record. So if the political cartoon isn't printed and stored somewhere, it could be very susceptible to being deleted or destroyed or forgotten about for sure. But it'll be forgotten about unless it's there, right? Unless somebody can find it. So historical record is an important thing about political cartoons, and I think we may be losing that. Now, the fifth and last thing about political cartoons is that they can influence and persuade. So they can change minds. I don't know about these days whether they can change minds, because everyone seems to be so hardened in their political beliefs, right? There's a term that political operatives use called swing voters, right? These are people who can change their minds, and that's all the other people they're not interested in. The people who have already made up their minds, they're not interested in. They're only interested in the people who haven't yet made up their minds or who could change their minds. And that's another tool to use to reach them, is a political cartoon, where you're showing something that on its surface is a cartoon, but it has critique and commentary, and if it gets engagement, if you laugh at it, or if you see something new because of it, it can influence and persuade you to vote for somebody else. So it has that kind of political clout. It can if it's done well. Okay, so that's the importance of political cartoons. It simplifies complex political issues. It provides a commentary and a critique on the political situation around us. A good political cartoon will engage you in some way. I mean, you don't have to laugh at it. You could actually feel sick looking at it. I'm going to talk about that in a second. And it has a historical record component, which is like people 100 years from now will be able to look back and see it, and it will describe a time in society that was in a real way, right? So people of the future can use that to do research on today. And then finally, it might influence and persuade or change a person's vote. But that's it with political cartoons. That's the purpose of them. But what do they like to look at? That's the other thing. Now, I have three favorites. Two of them are Canadian, and one of them is a guy from the UK called Martin Rowson. Now, if you haven't seen his stuff, it's very different. It's almost like Blake paintings. They are intensely well drawn or well colored cartoons. They're art. They're clear. Clearly they are art. You see his work and it's art. But what it looks like is looking like, if you've ever gone drinking and like as a youngster and you've really overdone it and you get home and you start puking into a bucket next to your bed, and you look into that bucket, that's what Martin Rowson's cartoons look like. They are just, they're just like, you just want to barf sometimes. You want to have a shower after you they're just, I can't, they're just horrifying, right? And he pictures politicians or kings or all these people with influence as just these slimy, just ooze dripping characters, right? And that's why it's so good. And it's just it's like seeing the politicians without the veneer. It's like when you take the veneer off, this is what's underneath, and Martin Rowson captures this, right? Now, often I don't understand his cartoons because his political cartoons or his political art, he likes to refer to himself as a visual journalist. So he's taking an intent here. He's critiquing big time in these. He's a visual journalist. He's but he's also following the other steps here. He's simplifying it. He's like engaging. It's a historical record and persuasion. I don't know about somebody whose mind would be changed by these things, but they are certainly intense. They're almost like Blake paintings. So look for him, Martin Rowson. You'll find his cartoons on The Guardian, the UK newspaper. He's always in The Guardian, so look for him in The Guardian. Now, my other favorites are Canadian, and Aislin draws for the Montreal Gazette. His cartoons, his real name is Terry Mosher, but he draws under the name Aislin. And his stuff it's cross-hatched, it's finely drawn. It's like, if you don't know what that is, it's like if you look at a banknote, if you look at a piece of currency, and you look at it really closely, all the fine lines that go in there to make the king's head or the Benjamin Franklin's head. He draws like that. He draws with this crosshatch sort of way. His art is exceptionally good. And what he does is he talks about politics, world politics, in his cartoons. And they're exceptional. I mean, he's won the Order of Canada. He's like really, his his stuff is syndicated, I think, in a lot of places now, in a lot of different publications. But anyway, Aislin, I like his stuff because it's global and it's nicely drawn. Now, my third favorite, of course, is local from Toronto, a local dude, Theo Moudakis, who draws for the Toronto Star. Now, his style of drawing is more like Peanuts, like Snoopy and Charlie Brown. All his characters are sort of rounded. It's simplified. The colors are Aislin doesn't use color, really. I don't see it anyway. I just see more lines, right? Black and white when I see his stuff. But with Theo Moudakis, he uses colors like you would in a Peanuts or Charlie Brown strip. It's just like, one or two or three colors, simple shapes and round. It's rounded. His figures are very rounded. I emailed him once. I sent him a tweet or whatever, saying, "Dude, you're like a steel fist in a rounded boxing glove. His characters have this rounded feel, but the message and the commentary that he puts in those rounded characters on his comic strip, that cuts through. Sometimes, not always, but he tries, and sometimes it really just connects right through. Like when he's talking about politics in these comic strips, but his politics are more of local focused, like Toronto, Ontario. There'll be some Canada, but I don't often see him reach out globally. So he might do it, I don't know, but I can't recall ever seeing it. But he does really great work on local and national politics with his cartoons, his political cartoons. So look for him, Theo Moudakis. He also has quite a Twitter presence, and he responds, or he used to respond to engagement. So anyway, it's hard to tell who does these days. So that's it for political cartoonists. They're really important, I think. It's an important way for us as a culture to process politics that's going on around us. I mean, and as the politics heats up around the world now, and especially in the United States this year, and it gets hotter and hotter and louder, it's the political cartoonists who will keep us sane, because they interpret all this stuff and they simplify it into something we can understand and either agree with or disagree with, but we have to take a position on it when we see it. And the cartoonist has a way to do this in a more subtle or gentle way, or in a just over-the-top way like Martin Rowson at The Guardian does with his strips. They just like nauseating, most of them. But they communicate, and the drawing and the painting, or however he does it, is just it's so well done. Anyway, political cartoons as art, yes, they are art, but they're much more than that. They are much more than that. They connect us to the politics around us. They can change our minds. They can illuminate political situations, and they can also act as a balm in this fraught world we're living in. All right, that's it for today. It's early, but I have a whole day ahead of me taking masking tape off the trim, and I'm going to build a table to put the monitor on, and I'm going to build a mic stand thing and some soundproof baffling for the low noise podcasting coming up in the future. Anyway, that's it for me. Do some art, see some art, make some art, read some political cartoons instead of just looking at the doom scrolling shit. Look at an actual piece of art that a political cartoonist or a visual journalist has done. It'll make your day. That's it for me, the Cannabis Goldsmith. I'll see you next week. The Cannabis Goldsmith is produced by Tribe Communications, Inc. in the Thousand Islands area of Ontario, Canada. You can see what we do at tribe.ca. Send us an email, alexd@cannabisgoldsmith.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week on the Cannabis Goldsmith.